Hello, Enid. Welcome to another COVID-19 update. Today, I have with me City Manager Gerald Gilbert.
Good afternoon, Derek. It's good to be here with you.
All right. Just wanted to say that we were having some technical difficulties, but we do have another encoder ordered. So in the future, we'll have less technical difficulties when it comes to our online streaming. Just wanted to put that out there. Now, in regards to the COVID-19, we're still in phase one. Could you tell us what's now open in phase one?
Yeah, in phase one, almost every business is allowed to reopen following certain procedures for sanitation and for good practices in dealing with to provide safety with the COVID environment. So, for instance, restaurants have been open and dining's been open for about 2 weeks. But with restrictions. So every other table typically is how they meet the social distancing requirement. There's good guidelines from the Oklahoma Restaurant Association. That's a good example. The governor's put his guidelines out there under the Commerce website for most businesses. And our plan pretty much lines up with the governor's plan, except that our phase two doesn't start till June the 1st. So when I said most businesses, movie theaters, anything that attracts large people, golf tournaments, bowling league tournaments, anything like that, organized sports activities has been, in our plan, has been postponed until phase two, which starts June the 1st. Mm-hmm. So otherwise, our plan's pretty much lined up with the governor's.
Okay. So I imagine it is still encouraged to avoid large groups and to stay 6 feet apart, and suggesting face masks when possible.
Yes, face masks are recommended, not required. They're recommended anytime you're in the public spaces, and certainly if you can't maintain social distancing. So I do see when I go out and about, I see people wearing face masks. So some people wear them, some people don't. So currently, that's what's ongoing, and we don't anticipate very many changes between now and June the 1st. I know we did change last week. The mayor put out a new one that allowed bars to reopen with restrictions on last Friday, and also for child nurseries and churches to reopen. And that declaration will actually be on the agenda meeting tomorrow for the consideration of the council.
Okay. Now, we know the phase one started May 1st, phase two, June 1st, and phase three, July 1st. When it comes to those 65 and over with pre-existing health conditions, will the stay-in-place order remain throughout until until there may be a vaccination, or how's that going to work when it comes to that?
Well, that's a great question. Some of that probably is still unknown to us at this time, but I know that currently in phase one, the emergency declaration requires people to stay at home that are in the vulnerable population, 65 or with an underlying medical condition, or if they live with, or people of any age if they live with folks that have those conditions. So the current declaration is enforced through June the 1st. I don't know whether or not that will be extended or not. Probably depend on what the governor's says and what our own city commission thinks. And just to follow up, I know as we have gone through these emergencies starting back in mid to late March, every one of these declarations has really been something that the mayor has taken action on, and then we've taken for ratification to the commission. I know that as we're on the side of reopening things and maybe some even tougher decisions about relaxing restrictions in the future, we'll likely just bring these to the commission for them to discuss and enact whatever they would like to do in the future.
Okay. Now, I know that June 1st, city offices are supposed to open.
Yes.
When it comes to some of our recreational things that we have in the community, for instance, Champlain Pool and our splash pads, what do you see in the future concerning these, whether or not they'll be opening or what have you?
Well, great question. The pool in particular is always challenging to operate. primarily from the personnel. We've got to get enough lifeguards to be able to operate the pool safely. Well, this year we had the added requirement of, can we operate the pool safely given the coronavirus problem and safety challenges, and can we get lifeguards in this environment? We're finding that to be very, very difficult at this point. So the city has not made the final decision on the pool yet, but it does look like it will be difficult to do. So it certainly won't be open, if at all, it won't be open on the normal schedule, which it would be open Memorial Day forward. That's not going to happen. Splash pads are something that I could see being open at some point this summer. I think we need to look into that a little bit further. And if we do open those, I would perceive that it would be like playground equipment, where we've specifically opened that, and we've said that we can't go out there and disinfect it between every use and all that kind of stuff. So we are looking at that. I think it's more likely the splash pads could be open at some point this summer than the pool.
Okay, and of course we've always had the fishing derby and
Yes.
the 4th of July celebration. Many are wondering, will that still be on? What do you see in the forecasts concerning that?
That's a great question. I mean, currently we are still planning for a July 4th celebration. Clearly that would be impacted by our ability to do that in a COVID environment. We also have a backup plan of looking at Labor Day in September. I know that, for instance, the Enid Symphony that always plays every year, they're planning and making arrangements for 4th of July, but they're also making arrangements for a backup plan in September if for some reason, well, if because of COVID we can't do it. The fishing derby would be the same way. The fishing derby, while it's outside, from previous years, it's everybody's elbow to elbow all the way around Meadow Lake Park. It's difficult to imagine that happening even on July 4th. Because I can't imagine there won't be some sort of social distancing requirements, probably still in that time frame. So we're still planning on doing some of the 4th of July events, including the fireworks, on the 4th, but at some point that may be postponed to a later date, depending on the current status of the COVID environment.
Okay, very good to know. Are we still minimizing non-essential travel?
Yes. We're minimizing non-essential travel through phase 1, which again for us is the rest of this month. It doesn't mean that travel can't be made, because we say minimize if possible, but we really think people should take that into account and businesses should take that into account. And here at the City of Enid we're taking that into account. And we're kind of at a point now where we need to make some runs for some things, so we need to determine, is it important enough to do it now or not. If people have to travel, they have to, but they should, and I think there's awareness that's been raised everywhere for all of us. Be careful if you do non-essential travel. Make sure wherever you're going, don't expose yourself to unnecessary risk and then bring it back. So yes, it's still in effect till the end of this month.
Okay, and that's going to be lifted a little bit in phase 2, I imagine, June 1st.
It's possible. We'll certainly again look at the environment, see what the governor's done, but it's very possible. As we do believe that at Enid, we certainly need to, part of what we're trying to balance is doing everything we can for the safety of the citizens and residents that live here, but also balancing the fact that the coronavirus threat is another risk that we all have, that we have to deal with every day. Businesses have to deal with now, the government has to deal with. And so we're trying to find a balance as we reopen things with being able to safely do that. So we'll certainly look at travel. I could imagine that prohibitions would remain on going to places like New York City, hotspots, and coming back, and I imagine that would remain in the governor's declaration as well.
Okay. Now, I know that the goal of the mayor's plan, the plan for the governor, and even at the White House level, is to keep people healthy and safe and to ensure that our hospitals have what they need. But there's a question that was on social media was saying, is there a penalty for not following the plan?
Yes, the emergency declaration allows for a $500 fine, so people could receive $500 fines. That's never been the intent of the city to go out and give fines. We have given a few. That was back probably much earlier in April. and it was really for large gatherings. I think everybody's a lot more careful now that we've reopened. I'm not aware that we've had, I'm sure there's been some violations, but I'm not sure there's been egregious violations that have been reported to the city. So I appreciate everybody doing their very best, businesses and individuals, to follow the rules and be safe and balance working and doing the things, the essential activities of life that we've really allowed in the reopening plan.
Okay. Another question would be, if there's a high number of COVID-19 cases, positive cases that arise, will the plan that we have be subject for modification?
Yes, and we have some specific criteria in the plan currently, where we talk about if 10% of the tests done in a period of time are positive tests, that would cause us concern. If we have 5 days of increasing positives in the city, that would be a concern. I'm pleased to say at this point, and cautious to say, we have not had much of a change even in the last 2 weeks. I believe we're at 21 positives in the city and 23 in the county, and so we've been fortunate. It doesn't mean there can't be an outbreak. There was one in Guyman related to the Seaboard plant, and I do know that some of those patients have overloaded the Amarillo Hospital, at least in the last week or so. I don't know what the current status is. Probably find out more on our phone call with health officials this afternoon. But we're very fortunate. We've still got a relatively low infection rate. Hospitals don't have very many patients in with COVID-related illnesses, and they began, as you know, doing elective procedures. So testing overall is significantly increased. There's over 1,700 people that have been tested in Garfield County. I realize that's still a small percentage of the entire population, but it's much greater than in the beginning. If you think you've been exposed and want to get a test, you can get a test at Garfield County. If you do anything at the hospital, you're going to get tested anyway. You can also go to the urgent wellness clinics, and they will test you. So I know Friday they gave an update from the county, and I do know that they have, so they probably updated you on Friday of their testing capabilities.
Mm-hmm. Yes. The opposing question, I guess, would be, if it remains to be a lower number of positives, will phase 3 be modified to begin earlier than July 1st?
It potentially could be, but that'd be a decision made by the City Commission, weighing the risk, weighing the data, and weighing what we're talking about doing.
Okay.
So I'm very confident in the leadership that we have from Mayor Pankinen to the other 6 commissioners. And I think they have also been working in this extraordinary, unprecedented environment as volunteers. And certainly none of them knew that they'd be signing up for a pandemic. So I appreciate their service and leadership.
Now, as far as, that's most of my COVID questions, but this is still kind of COVID related. We're going to have a commission meeting, a study session and commission meeting tomorrow.
Yes.
Can you talk to us about the study session first that begins at 5 o'clock p.m. tomorrow? What's going to be on the agenda?
Yeah, it's a jam-packed study session, and I know Scott talked about it in the session last week. It hasn't really changed. Accessory buildings. We have an accessory building ordinance that's changed probably 2 or 3 times. It is deemed by some of the citizens and residents to be too restrictive and too constraining. Mm-hmm. And so we have 2 different versions that we have put on there for the commission to consider, and giving them information and trying to determine whether they need to change the ordinance. And so that'll be one of the primary items on there. We're also very excited to give an update on the skate park, very similar to what was done at the park board last week. We are moving along on there. I do know that we are working through a contract issue right now with the company that we think we would like to do that. And so as soon as we have that worked out, we'll have an action item on. It may not be on this agenda tomorrow, but it will be on as soon as possible to get the new skate park moving. And then there's a golf rate revised ordinance on there that does change the rates upward for the most part, but it's taken into account including sales tax. And so the rate increases aren't as great as it may appear looking at the rate sheet. And there's a solid waste revision on there too that Scott Morris or Tim Stevens will talk about, that just deals with some certain situations with polycarts and dumpsters.
Okay.
So it should be a full hour and 15-minute study session.
Okay. And following that, at 6:30 p.m., we have our commission meeting, Mayor and Board of Commissioners meeting. And it looks jam-packed too. Can you
It is.
run off just tell us a little bit about what's going to be in that meeting also.
It is a very packed meeting, lots of business and things to take care of. It starts out with a proclamation for a Staff Sergeant Van Leer from the Air Force Base for a heroic thing he did. Not only is he providing Meals on Wheels for people, but he knows the people he delivers to well enough that he knew that something was awry at one of the residences he serves, and so he helped a lady who actually had fallen and couldn't get up, who had been there for a while. We are also be looking at a sign ordinance variance for a big billboard that's being brought by Tony Zacuti and his family. We're also, I'll just got a copy right here. We've got the budgets are on there. We've had numerous budget meetings, and the commission gets a chance to approve the budget tomorrow night. There's some CDBG, the regular CDBG funding, and a whole bunch of contracts, including CMAR at this point. So we're working through some CMAR contract issues, but I believe we might have those worked out, and I'm excited to get that in front of the commission for them to be able to make a decision.
Okay.
So,
That's the gist of the...
so it's a busy meeting.
Okay. That's all the questions I have concerning that. Then we'll have any questions online. So if there are any other remarks you'd like to leave with the community?
No. I just I think the city is going in the right direction now. I appreciate the efforts of everyone, the individuals that live here and the businesses, in trying to manage and be as safe as we can in this environment. This virus is a very bad thing. It certainly impacts certain people worse than others, and so as we learn more and more about it, I'm sure we'll be able to adjust better to it. But I appreciate everybody's efforts, and I look forward to seeing you around. If you have questions, feel free to send them to me or to Derek, and we'll get answers for them. And I know we'll keep updating you, not just on COVID, but on things about the city in general, and we'll do that at least on a weekly basis, myself or Scott. So yeah. I look forward to those future updates.
Appreciate you.
Thank you for your efforts and the COMO team.
All right. Thank you, Enid, for joining us. And just to remind you, tomorrow the commission meeting, the study session will begin at 5 p.m. and the commission meeting will start at 6:30 p.m. It will be live streamed here at enid.org/City of Enid, Oklahoma. And you can go to our actually facebook.com/City of Enid, Oklahoma for Facebook. You can go to enid.org/meeting in order to go see it online, which will take you to our civic website, or you can view it at youtube.com/City of Enid. If you want to sign up for public comments for the commission meeting that starts at 6:30 p.m., you need to go to enid.org/public comments. And if you're going to be speaking on the program with public comments, you need to also join the Zoom meeting itself, which is enid.org/virtual meeting. So we appreciate you every Monday coming here. Next week, because Monday is a holiday, we'll be back here on Tuesday for an update with the city. But you can join us each Friday with an update from the Garfield County Health Department. Thank you and have a great day.